Hey guys, Jeffries here, and welcome back to the Jeffries network on OpenTTD. And we start over here at Fort Hampton Parkway. Every time I look at this, I hate myself more and more. It is not the station that I wanted it to be. Let's put it that way. It has not turned out anything like what I wanted it to be. So, we're going to fix it. Simple as that. We are going to fix it. So the first thing we need to do is progress time and get these trains out of our way. And I think we're going to go a little bit back to basics. So if I grab that a sec, I'll pause the game a second again. If I head over this way, where are we? Further south, in fact further east. I think we should find what I'm looking for. This is kind of a great example of what I wanted it to be. This kind of setup. Obviously it didn't turn out this way, but we can make it turn out this way. Excuse me. God, that came from nowhere. So yeah, we're going to do that. And one of the easiest ways we're going to do that is by combining all of the 4 lines into one again. I don't know if anyone's... It's not showing on screen, which is good. But I've got that real weird screen tear thing again. It's like I leave the screen behind and then it suddenly like lurches to catch up again. It's not great. What am I doing? I am going to trim all the northbound lines here so that no trains can get through. Let's check. That's a northbound and that's a northbound. Like so. And then on this side, I'm going to trim these 2 inputs. And then on this side, I'm going to trim these 2 inputs. And that gives us our basic station entrance. Now, as I say, we're going to be using Monfingford, I think it was called, as our guide. So we're going to have tighter corners. It's going to feel more like a tightly packed station rather than this big wide open God knows what this is, because this station and this station are miles apart in terms of well, in terms of everything, and it looks horrible. So it makes sense to have a complete redo. And I said I was going to do this off camera, but then I thought actually it would make more sense if I did at least some of this on camera. There might be some cuts and things like that. I know for a fact this episode is going to carry over onto Monday at least. It might even carry over onto Friday as well, depending on how long it turns out to be. I'm also starting to get a lot of freezes, like that one there. So this map is starting to take its toll. I wouldn't say it's done yet. I'm not going to quit that easy, but it is starting to really struggle to load this map. So we could be near the end, is what I'm saying. We could be near the end. You know, I've done things like improve the RAM. I think because I've done things like full animation is off, full detail is off. I could turn fences off again, I suppose, although I don't think that's going to make any difference. Not particularly. They're static objects anyway, so there's no reason why that would make a difference. So I might as well have them on because I quite like them. But yeah, we're going to do some changes. And in fact, I can start the changes now. Over on this side of things, I can completely get rid of all of this. Like so. And all of this bit here too. Like so. Now the one problem we have is here. We do still have this City Connect platform, so we are going to have to move that. But that shouldn't be too much of an issue. It just means we've got to bear that in mind when we're working. Something else I have to bear in mind is we do have cross-country trains coming in from this side, which is something else that will probably be changed in the future, thinking about it. I was thinking about this the other day because I was doing some research, as I always do, and I was doing some research on cross-country because I was looking to bring in loads of new cross-country lines. And I just wanted to see how the real cross-country franchise was run. Because, as you can imagine, it runs on lots of different main lines. It does have some dedicated routes, but most of the time it shares main lines with other operators. And what it turns out is, yes, it does do that. But every single cross-country service, at some point in its journey, passes through Birmingham New Street. So that's what I wanted to try and recreate. I wanted to try and make all my cross-country trains go through Birmingham New Street, or, go through a version of Birmingham New Street. And I was getting really frustrated because I was thinking about the service that we've got, and all I kept thinking was, there's no point really anywhere where I can make it pass through the same station, because we don't have a connection between Great Western and we don't have any connections between the non-electrified Western main line and the two electrified Northern lines coming out of GSG. And then it sort of hit me that I don't need to do that. Because the only way that would work is if it went into GSG and then reversed out again. But I don't need to do that because both services start at Pronworth. So Pronworth is our version of Birmingham. In slightly different, obviously, in that Birmingham is sort of in the middle of the country, hence it's in a place called the Midlands. And also the fact that both Pronworth stations are terminus stations. There's no through route. But actually that, again, sort of plays into our favour, because if we just have both of those terminals as the start points of different cross-country routes that branch out all over the map, we actually end up with a pretty good system. So that is how it's going to work. So there's going to be lots of different cross-country services coming out of those two terminals. Now I've been looking. The real life cross country uses HSTs, which we do have. They also use these 225s. Now in real life, I don't think they use these, which is really weird. In real life, they use Voyagers and Super Voyagers, but obviously we haven't got them available to us. So I guess this is meant to be that. I'm not 100% sure. Also, this is route availability thing here, and I kind of want to know what that means because that sounds quite interesting. And then we got I think it's the eastern one with cross-country livery. Now, real life cross-country also uses turbo stars, but as you can see on here, there is no cross-country livery available on the turbo stars, both 2 and 3 car. In fact, I don't think cross-country is available on any other train, which is really disappointing. Although this Super Sprinter... Oh no, sorry, I'm getting mixed up. This one, does this have... I would be amazed if it does, and it doesn't look like it does at all. The 155, I wouldn't have thought so, although it does have the Metro one. How many cars is that? Don't think it says. It is also slower. No cross-country there. Definitely no cross-country there. So that's a real shame. I'm actually quite annoyed that that hasn't been included, because it's I don't think it's that recent either that cross-country have started using 170s. And even if it was recent, there's no alternatives, which is really, really disappointing, I would say, because I'd like to run a variety of cross-country trains, and not just the fast ones. So that is a bit of a shame. So we might have to improvise and use another livery that looks a bit like cross-country, and sort of fake it a little bit. I'm not afraid of doing that. I have done that in certain other areas. I mean, obviously, this game is a representation of rail transport. Obviously, railways can be built in more directions than just straight lines and diagonals. Likewise, bridges and tunnels can also be built on curves. in real life. So this is trying to think of a good way of describing it. I think it's best summed up in a comment that I received recently. Someone said that they were relieved to find a channel that didn't just do 10-track maglev intersections all the time, and I really agree with that. It's kind of another reason why I started this series. Is every time I go on YouTube to try and find inspiration for the game, I do a YouTube search for OpenTTD, and more often than not, I do find myself having to troll through all of these videos that people have done, and I don't know what possesses them to do it either, because I don't think there's any skill involved in this, but they just make videos of 10-track intersections all the time, like that's what people want to do. But actually, it is perfectly possible to build a 2-track main line connecting with 3 or 4 other 2-track main lines where everything works. You don't have to have 10 tracks just for efficiency's sake. It is perfectly possible to do it with 2. And I think that's the point that people miss with this game sometimes, is it is a representation, but if you use it properly, it can become realistic. And that is something that I am definitely trying to make obvious in this series. It's the fact that you can make it realistic. So, with that in mind, what we are going to be doing with this is creating a 4-track main line that goes into a big junction on this side, a big junction on this side, and a big junction on this side, with loads of bay platforms all sort of pointing in towards each other and through platforms on the outsides, instead of having bay platforms thrown over to one side. And this is inspired by, I was doing some research and I was reading about big terminal stations in and around Britain, and one of the ones I focused on was Edinburgh Waverley. And the way Waverley is best described is it's a big island platform with through tracks at the sides. And that is, I mean, you couldn't hit the nail harder on the head if you wanted to, really. That is exactly what Edinburgh Waverley is. And it's not just Waverley, it's Darlington is like it as well. Trying to think of some stations sort of south of Birmingham even. But some of these big terminus stations, because they were originally built with just 2 tracks or 3 tracks or 4 tracks, and they've slowly developed into what are now sort of 20 platform stations, they are built on this premise of all the through tracks are on the sides and the terminus tracks are in the middle. And that's what I want to replicate in this new Fort Hampton. So I'm going to leave this road here as a marker, but I would like it to be that all of the platforms, I mean, how wide is, let's check this quickly, how wide is this gap? If it's 10, oh, that's good, that's a good number there. I'm quite happy with that. Obviously there's going to be lots of terminus platforms here. There are going to be lots of different main lines spurting off of this area now, because of the number of terminus platforms we're going to end up having. It's just, you know, they have to go somewhere. They can't exist for the sake of it. And I think that's another problem that I had here, was I ended up with so many platforms. There was no way every single platform in this station was going to end up built on. Absolute, just no way. No way could I get the right number of services to service the right number of platforms without clogging up every single main line in and out of the station. Wasn't going to happen. So, as I say, we've rebooted Fort Hampton once already. We're going to reboot it again, and this time hopefully we're going to do it properly. So let's get this train out of the way, because it's taking its very sweet time right now. I'm also going to sever, again I pause when I do this because it's quite a fine scale maneuver. I'm going to sever that a little bit there as well, just so we don't end up with more City Connect trains, because I want to build a new City Connect terminus here as well. Because I think one of the things with City Connect is there's 2 lines at the moment. I would like there to be 8 maybe, all spanning off in different directions, but I can see that more than one is going to end up at Fort Hampton because it's such a big, well, it's going to be such a big station. Now again, Fort Hampton itself is actually here, so this is very, very optimistic. I was watching, again, because I go on YouTube a lot, as I'm sure you know, and sometimes I just find random videos on the home screen and I watch them, and I found a series called Unfinished London, which is ironic, really, because I think the series is quite unfinished, but I strongly suggest you check it out. It's by a guy called Jay Foreman, who is actually a very, very good YouTuber and a very good comedian, as it turns out, and a musician. He's written a song naming all of the London Underground stations, so you should go check out that. But in one of his videos, it was about London's airports, and he was talking about how some other towns or airport authorities try to get in on the whole London sort of prefix in front of airports, and one of which was Ashford. Now, for those of you that don't know, Ashford is in Kent, which, as it turns out, and as he said in the video, London Ashford Airport is actually closer to France than it is to London, and it's 20 miles outside of the town that it's named after. So, I think Fort Hampton Parkway is a very, very good example of that. For some reason, we're trying to capitalise. Fort Hampton itself is quite big, it turns out, 57,000 people living here. I think one of the golden rules for this game is times the populations by 10 to get a more realistic value. So let's say we've got 570,000 people living in Fort Hampton. Quite big. So therefore, we want the station to have that in its name, because it's famous. Everyone wants to go to Fort Hampton. That's why we've got a station here, Ronwell Fort Hampton, and then we've got the actual Fort Hampton Parkway over here. Right, we're nearly done. I'm sort of filling time at the moment whilst we're waiting for this train to get out of the way, and I do apologise for that. It's not the most efficient way, I admit. But, oh well, what can you do? So, I would say this train is enough out of the way for us to... Actually, no, it's not really, because I want it to clear this area, and I kind of want this train here out of the way as well. So I'm going to put a new severance there, and I'm going to route this train so that it's out of the way, or at least I will do once this train's out of the way. Come on. Keep going. And there. Okay. So let's call that the cut-off point for now. And we're going to do that. And then we're going to demolish this station with the intention of rebuilding it in the future. Once again, there is a train in the way, so I need to get that out of the way. Annoying. Actually, there's a faster way of doing it. Grab. Skip. You're going to be very early at your next stop, but actually, I don't care. Get out of my way. Right, quick Google search, Edinburgh Waverley track plan. No, I don't want maps. Since when was maps moved next to web? Probably always, actually, and I've just never used it before. I believe that's the one I'm looking for. No, that's Darlington. Although actually Darlington works just as well. It's one thing I'm really annoyed about with Google. You can never find what you're actually looking for these days. I mean, I've quite clearly typed in Edinburgh Waverley track plan, and it's showing me everything except what I've searched for. Like Darlington, which is on the same line, yes, but it's not the same place. That'll do. I think I've found a good enough version. Right. Get rid of this, and now the big job. All of this. Bye-bye. Okay. And then all of this bye-bye. And all of this bye-bye. And this bye-bye. So as I say, the plan now is relatively simple. And it's kind of what I wanted to do in the first place, and I bottled it because I didn't think it would work. But actually, I think it would work a lot better than what this is. Because this is a mess. And as I say, every time I looked at it, I hated myself more and more for actually making it. Because it really should never have existed like this in the first place, and I let it happen. Right. So the idea now is very, very simple. I'm going to ignore this side for now, because that side's not very simple. But over here, we're going to have tracks like this. As I say, there's going to be 16 tracks here, not all of which are going to be passengers, because I think we could do with a nice mail service here as well. But it's going to look something a bit like that. Okay. And then here, let's think. Yeah. So here, there's going to be lines that spur off like this. On this side. Let's say there. In fact, it could come back a little bit. Oh, I missed by one. That's actually very, very close. So yeah, it'll be something like that. As a basic idea. And then on this side, we'll have something similar. Actually, I'll come back to that in a second. Let's do that for a second. And then let's say that one goes to there, that one goes to there, that one goes to there, and that one goes to there. And that one goes to there as well. Something more like that. So that's 1, 2, 3, that's 6 lines there that all connect up. And in fact, I can do something a little bit like that. And we'll get to a little bit more of the connections on this side in a second. But then here, what we're going to have is, let's see, waypoint signal. It's going to be a little bit further over, so I think like that. That might even be a little bit further over than that still. Something a bit more like that, maybe. But then here, that's going to come out like so. That's going to connect up. Then that's going to be 2, 3, 4. So hang on, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. It'll be something like that, basically. And then this will be a series of platforms that will go across like this. And there'll be a whole host of them. And then there'll be a building in the middle, and then these platforms here, these 5 as it turns out, will be bay platforms. And I think that's going to be our station. So you can now access lines from other lines. And I think that looks a lot tidier. It looks a lot nicer as well. So the next thing I need to do is, again, wait for this train to get out of the bloody way. It's insistent, I'll give it that. That and the fact that I keep pausing the game before I fully give it a chance to get out of the way, which doesn't help. But in the past, with this station, I've tried to separate I've tried to separate higher speed lines from lower speed lines. But actually, in real life, they do cross over. And there are junctions, there are flat junctions, and that happens at big stations, because most of the time, every train stops. They're all going to be going at a slow enough speed, they're not going to be getting in each other's way, and it works a lot better. Now I do have to be a little bit careful about how long I let this go for, and in fact, just so I don't lose it, I'm going to pop that there. That's our Fort Hampton Parkway at the moment, and also over here, that's our Ronwell Fort Hampton there. Right, I think this train has pretty much cleared the line now. I'll give it a little bit more time just to clear that signal. Okay, good. Let's finish this off then, shall we? So let's grab all of that, and we'll grab all of that. Now, even if I get this bit finished in a relatively good amount of time, there's still loads of timetabling issues and all sorts of other things that need to be sorted before we can move on. Or at least before we can call this episode an episode. So let's drag that one a little bit further over. That one, and that one. And these are our 4 tracks here. Like so. And they'll come down the hill here. And they'll connect up over this way. Now, I think one of the other problems I had before was I kept getting lost in what I was doing, which meant that I kept not so much forgetting things, but getting a bit overwhelmed by it all. So, as I say, this is the basic station structure that we're going to have. Now, I think if we start over this side and then work across, we'll make our lives a lot easier. So we're going to cut that there, and we're going to put signals in like this. Now, one of the other things that I wanted to experiment here is having platforms of different lengths. Because again, in real life, that's what you have. So, again, I'm trying to find a good track plan. I need to get a book, really, of track plans. Because I just can't find any good ones. Although again, I'm looking on images, so maybe if I went on web, there might be a... Nope. A model railway one, which looks awful. It's this one, I suppose. I know you guys can't see what I'm seeing right now, which is really helpful. Scotland, Edinburgh, Waverley. There we are. This might help me. Let's see, Edinburgh Park, South Gyle, Haymarket, Waverley. Yeah, that's quite good. This is a schematic track plan rather than an actual map one, but this is just as helpful. So, what you end up with is up here, we'll grab this one and we'll do the little drag and drop. So you end up with a station that looks like that as a starter. Now I can get rid of you because Fort Hampton Parkway is now moved to over here. In fact, I'm going to try and get the name tag as close to the middle as I can. There we go. Okay, and I can already see that this little bit here needs some extra work on it because the diagonals are in the wrong place. There's no room for the waypoint. But that's fine. That's easily fixable. We'll come back to that in a second. Okay, so over here, this is our station. Now, as we know, there are going to be railjet services that will be using this. They will probably be using the inner 2 most platforms, so they need to be 2 tiles longer each. One there, and I don't think we actually need them there, so that's fine. Okay, and once that's done, you know, I could go as far as to say that I think it's just now a case of experimentation. Something a bit like that. Maybe a bit more like that. And then you put the signals at the ends of the platforms. So, let me think a little bit more. This side, definitely, the platforms are going to be all kinds of different lengths as we put these tracks in properly. So the idea is there'll be 2 central tracks that, even if it slaloms across, there will still be 2 central tracks. There are no through roads here that don't have platforms in. That's crucial as well. We want that to be a definite thing. Let's see, I'm going to shorten that by 2. These 2 by 1. That one by 2. That one by 1. That one by 2. And that one by... Actually, no, I'm going to have that as that length again. And that's also going to be reflected in the way that these crossovers work. So there'll be one